for being here today. For those who I have not met yet, I am Colonel Bevan. I'm the commanding officer here at Marine Corps Base Hawaii. And alongside of me is Rear Admiral Lennox. He's the designated on-scene commander for the recovery operations of the P-8. Since the last time we spoke, there has been an awful lot of action that has occurred across a variety of areas and with a variety of partners and teams. And when we spoke last, I told you that my planning guidance very early on in this process to all the folks that were part of my Emergency Operations Center was that anything that we did was going to be deliberate, it was going to be thoughtful, it was going to be measured, and it was going to involve robust conversation and collaboration. And so I'm confident in telling you that the plan that the Admiral is about to brief incorporated all those elements from a variety of partners. And on Monday, I talked to you about some of the partners that have been involved, and as I said then, and I'll repeat now, the list of individuals and agencies is too robust to detail, but I appreciate their support from local elected officials, from the agencies, National Oceanographic, Atmospheric Administration, DLNR, here, the United States Coast Guard, U.S. Fish and Wildlife. I could go on. And it has also involved, local elected officials and leaders who have been very ready with their time and their support. And I would particularly highlight our cultural practitioners. I have very much appreciated their willingness to engage into dialogue, and frankly, I appreciate their friendship to me, both personally and professionally, and their willingness to be a partner with that. As we move forward into the plan that the Admiral is going to brief, I just want you to be aware that I'm highly optimistic of success. This plan has been thoroughly vetted and discussed at all levels. We have been thoughtful to risk both to personnel, but also to the aircraft, but equally as important to the environment. And so I want to assure you that once that aircraft is out of the water and back on land, our work is not done. And part of my responsibilities as the commander of Marine Corps Base Hawaii is to provide oversight for the actions that follow. And so I will ensure that I'm cognizant and vigilant as we work to characterize the nature of the ecosystem and the coral and to any damage that was done to the environment, and then to be assistful to our partners and our sister services as we move forward with any steps after that. I will turn the microphone over to Rear Admiral Lennox, but again, I appreciate your time here today, and then we'll take questions afterwards. Thank you.
Hey, good afternoon, and thank you for joining me today. I am Rear Admiral Kevin Lennox, and I'm going to provide an update on the status of our efforts to recover P-8 side number 561 from Kaneohe Bay. But before I talk about that, I do want to provide you two updates from last night. The first update is that overnight early this morning on the high tide, the aircraft did shift a little. So if you look at where it is right here, on the high tide, it gained a little buoyancy, it lifted up off, and it rotated about 30 degrees, something like that. So we've had divers in the water. They went down, took a look at any places where we would have contacted the coral. At least our initial assessment is there was no impact to the environment. What we believe happened as it was rotating is it was fully up off the bottom there, except for you've seen the video of the nose gear kind of sitting in a pocket, and it rotated around that kind of like your shoulder would rotate in its joint. So then it settled back down, and it's now sitting something like this. While that was going on, our contractors were there on the scene. They observed it starting to move. We have mooring lines on it. They were able to control the movement, and we do expect that there's some potential that could happen again tonight. There's another high tide tonight, again early in the morning, and tonight we'll probably even have more connections to the aircraft as we finish rigging to begin recovery operations. The second update, and this one is unfortunate, is that DLNR observers this morning found a deceased sea turtle floating in between two of our barriers. I have no information on the cause of death on that particular sea turtle. DLNR did report a sick sea turtle struggling in the vicinity yesterday. We suspect that may be related. But the Hawaii Marine and Animal Recovery team has taken custody of that. They'll make an assessment, and if necessary, we'll do a necropsy on that turtle to find out why it passed. They'll be the ones who can give any further updates on that. So with that, our focus remains to remove the aircraft from the bay as quickly and safely as possible. The team's been working around the clock to develop a salvage plan for this aircraft that prioritizes the safety of our personnel and the safety to the critical ecosystems here in Kaneohe Bay. And this morning we approved that plan. We didn't develop this plan in isolation. I'd like to thank our partners here at Marine Corps Base Hawaii, the folks at HERE, DLNR, the Navy supervisor of Salvage, Smith Salvage out of Singapore, and Centralift Company. Their support and consultation have been invaluable as we work to develop this methodical operation, and very confident that it will achieve our objectives of a safe operation to the people who are conducting it, protecting the environment as we remove the aircraft, and then potentially returning that aircraft to operational capability. So the plan is to use something called roller bags. They will lift the aircraft higher in the water, then we'll float the aircraft to the shoreline at the end of the runway. We will roll the aircraft across the sea-land interface onto the runway, and then once the airplane is in place on the runway, we'll settle it down onto its landing gear. So roller bags, they're large inflatable cylinders. The bag part creates buoyancy in the water, so it's inflatable, lifts the aircraft up, and then on land, that's where the roller part comes in. They keep the aircraft separated from the land. The aircraft will move on top of those rollers the whole time without the landing gear or anything touching anything until we set it back down at the place where we want to set it on the piano keys at the end of the runway. So looking over here, while supporting the aircraft, we expect, based on the weight of the aircraft and the buoyancy that these roller bags create, that the aircraft will be lifted fully out of the water, and the bags themselves, the maximum depth of those bags will be 5 feet. So if you look at this chart over here, what you can see is we have a topographic scan generated using side scan radar by our side scan sonar by our Navy divers. So here's the edge of the runway. There's a rocky area there. There's a small band of coral. Then there's a sandy channel with a depth of 25, 21 feet through there. Then as we get out to where the coral is, you can see a depth of 20 feet there, 12 feet over by the left wing, 16 feet by the right wing, and know that it is rotated a little at this point, so it's actually more of it is in the deep water. The shallowest water is just where the nose gear is in contact with the bottom, and that's 7 feet deep. So the expectation is the bags will inflate, lift it straight up, and at that point, nothing will be in contact with the bottom of the bay here. We will rotate the aircraft and then float it over until one of the bags comes in contact with the coral. If I could have the next slide, please. So at that point, once we're up here, that's when we start rolling the aircraft up onto land. So when we're doing that, you've got bags up here on the land that are supporting some of the weight. You still have some bags in the water that are floating, that are supporting more of the weight of the aircraft, and potentially one of the bags at a time will come in contact with the small band of coral. Not guaranteed, but we are considering that possibility. These bags are inflated to 3 to 5 psi. It's kind of an ingenious system. So as the weight of the aircraft comes down on those bags, that force is distributed across the entire surface area of the bags, which means that at any point on the ground where the bags are coming into contact with it, there's just 3 to 5 pounds of pressure, which is significantly less than if you were just to try and stand on a piece of coral. So we have high confidence that we will be able to execute this whole thing with no further impact to the ecosystem here. Once the aircraft's out of the bay and onto the runway, and that's kind of beyond here, this is the ramp, the overrun area, and then the runway is up here. That's a flat, stable surface. Then we'll deflate the bags and start lowering the aircraft down. As the aircraft comes down, that silver part of the landing gear called the oleo, that's where we're going to have our straps. We'll remove them, and then we'll compress that down a little until we're in a position to put some jacks under the aircraft. We'll settle it down under the jacks, and that'll give us the opportunity to bring engineers in. Those engineers will take a look at the landing gear and see if it's safe to tow the aircraft. If it is safe to tow the aircraft, then we'll hook up a tow tractor. We'll hook up a second one to serve as a braking tractor, because obviously we won't be able to use the brakes on the aircraft. And then we're going to tow it over to a wash rack. That's an area where we can do a freshwater rinse on the aircraft to get all the salt off of it, because that salt is our biggest concern. That salt has a corrosive impact on metal and all the different aircraft components, so we want to stop those processes so we can begin reclaiming the aircraft. But because it's on a wash rack, we'll be able to capture all that water. It's a segregated drain system. There's a couple wash racks on this aircraft, and that's just a normal thing that they do on this base. Second possibility, though, is that the landing gear is not safe. If that's the case, we'll re-inflate the bag, and then we can use those roller bags to translate the aircraft on top of those bags over to its final parking spot. And if that's the case, when we set it down, we'll set up containment around it, we'll set up absorbent pads. We'll do that same rinsing system, but none of that water will get back into the bag. So at that point, once it's settled into its final parking spot, the aircraft will turn back over to Maritime Patrol and Reconnaissance Wing, and they will be able to begin the process of doing the assessment and repair on that aircraft, and if feasible, the Navy plans to return that critical asset back to operational status. Since this incident and throughout the salvage process, the Navy and Marine Corps leaders have coordinated extensively with federal and state agencies, state legislators, and community partners. We understand our obligation as a good neighbor and as a member of the community to conduct a complete assessment of the coral reef so we understand the impact of this mishap. And we're going to do so openly, side by side with the appropriate elements of the Hawaii state government and our partners here at Marine Corps Base Hawaii. I want to thank those partners for all your patience and support up to this point, and I'll conclude with a thank you to you, the media, for your commitment keeping the public informed, and we will continue to update you as the salvage progresses. I look forward to taking your questions.
All right, so at this point, we'll open up the question and answer. We ask that you limit to one question and one follow-up until we get through everybody, and then we'll see how much time we have. So we'll start with you, ma'am.
Do you have a timeline of when you folks will be able to have this?
So everything's condition based at this point. So yesterday and today, we've been staging all the equipment. We're hoping that at the end of today, we'll have that equipment, but the weather gets a vote. The equipment can be finicky. So if we're ready, then we'll start floating the aircraft sometime tomorrow. At that point, it's kind of by stage. So we float it, we take a look and make sure everything's the way we want it. Then we rotate it and we bring it up against the shore. At that point, it's kind of a critical piece because we can never leave the aircraft partly in the water and partly out. Once we start pulling it out, it's going to come all the way up until it's on dry land. So when we begin that part, we need to look at how much daylight we have left and make sure that we don't start too late and then find ourselves having to work into dark or past a long crew day because this is fatiguing work and we want to make sure that we're setting a 16-hour maximum crew day before, so we don't want to put ourselves in a position where we have to go past that.
Follow-up? Okay. Over to you, ma'am.
Why did you decide on this method?
A couple different reasons. These guys have had a lot of success. The roller bags are a safe way to do it because you're not lifting the aircraft up. I mean, we are going to be able to lift it straight up to a buoyant position, but then it's just easy to roll it up. Additionally, it has the least impact, negligible impact, probably none on the coral as we execute it, and it also does not have very much impact. We don't expect any impact on the aircraft as we bring it out. So it kind of really maximizes all of our three objectives, and it's one that we're able to start quickly.
What are the risks?
You know, Centerlift has been doing this for years. They do it really well. They've done stuff after hurricanes where barges have been put ashore. So we're actually really confident in the success of this.
So have they done it when there's been coral in the area before?
So they did one after, was it Hurricane Florence in 2018. That was a 1,000-ton barge that went into a very sensitive seagrass habitat where the turtles on the Outer Banks live. And they were able to go in there, lift that up and get it out of there. And then much like here, state agencies, Coast Guard did a post-event assessment and found no discernible impact to the environment. That was a 1,000-ton barge. This is a 60-ton aircraft, so 6% of that weight. Like I said, they're really good at their job.
All right, over to you, sir.
Thanks, Matt. Dan McCausey with the Star Advertiser. I don't understand how the roller bags work. So the nose gear is in the hookah. And
is.
then how do you get it under the nose gear, or are you lifting?
So it doesn't go under the nose gear. The bags are sitting crossways under the hull of the main tube body of the airframe. The nose gear is in between the bags.
And then is it automated, or how is it moving? Are the bags being controlled by shore?
Yes, so there's two pulling devices here that are hooked to the main landing gear here and the main landing gear here. So those are the ones that are going to put the motive force to pull it in. And then there's a second set that don't pull as hard, that come out this way, around, and then come back in. So on both sides. So we have 4 axes of pull to be able to control the orientation of the aircraft, get it aligned correctly, and then pull it up out of the water.
Mechanically, not with.
Correct. These are
Personnel
big machines. However, we do on each line we have a potentiometer that will show us the pull force at any given moment to make sure that we've done the analysis. We understand the maximum that's allowed on the landing gear, and based on the calculations we've done, and we've done it a couple different ways, the maximum we expect is 50% of the normal working load on those, which also has a safety margin built into it. So we're confident that we're not exceeding any structural loads on the aircraft.
So, yeah.
Kristen Consilio, KITV. Excuse me if you answered this in a previous press conference, but besides the fuel that you removed, is there any oil, antifreeze, like any other potentially hazardous things that could leak?
Well, so let me start by saying that we've had eyes on the water around this aircraft since it went in the water, and there's been no detection of anything that has leaked out of the aircraft. The aircraft's in good shape, and all of the systems in the aircraft that would contain fluid maintain their integrity, and all of that fluid has stayed in, except for the fuel that we took out ourselves. So nothing has gone into the water. It is a normal aircraft, so we pulled out most of the fuel, or almost all of the fuel, but there's engine oil, there's hydraulic fluid, all those normal things, but those are in sealed systems, and we expect all of that to come out with the aircraft, and we don't expect anything to go in the water. If it does, we do have the same containment around there. We have absorbents ready to capture that, and we have skimmers ready to go. And just as we've had eyes on it for the last 24 hours a day since it went in, we'll have that same observation as we're bringing it out.
And specifically, is the state going to be there who's overseeing this whole operation besides, you folks?
So the state's been there side by side with us since day one. They've been in our emergency operations center meetings here with the base. They were on the scene observing us doing the defueling. They were in the water on jet skis observing the refueling. They're in the water on jet skis right now, and they've had observation boats all around it. So they're there to provide oversight, to provide observations to us, and obviously we stay in close consultation with them. The Navy is the one providing oversight to the contractor. So we've got supervisor of Salvage, which is a Department of Navy organization that does this all over the world. They've contracted with Smith Salvaging out of Singapore, and then the subcontractor who's working the roller bags is Center Lift. They're all really good at their job. It's a commercial company, and we've contracted with them to get the aircraft out of the water.
The state will be there the entire process.
Absolutely, yes.
All right, so KHON was unable to attend today, and they submitted a few questions that I'll ask you now. What sort of mitigation response plan is there in any case of emergency?
I think I just kind of went through that, but so that's the environmental piece. And then, of course, we said we want to maintain the safety of everyone on the scene. So if there was some kind of an injury, we have EMTs out there ready to do the immediate response. We have ambulances on call. We have a plan to get to local hospitals. And then, of course, because this is a diving situation, we have access to a decompression chamber if we needed that.
And in line with a question just asked, will state crews be allowed access after the salvage is done to conduct empathetic surveys?
Absolutely. So we've got to get the aircraft out of there. We plan on working side by side with the state of Hawaii and Marine Corps Base Hawaii. I think Colonel Bevan really covered that well in his comments. But we have nothing to hide. We want everyone to come in. We'll take a look at the site and make sure we understand what impacts we've had.
Any other questions? Go ahead, ma'am.
That is the hope. So, that'll be conditions-based as well. So it's in really good condition for one that's been sitting in the water. We'll pull it out. We'll rinse the aircraft off, and then engineers will go in and assess the condition of the different pieces of it and see if we can get it back up in the air. It's the kind of thing that has happened before. These aircraft are designed to operate in a maritime environment, so they are exposed to salt air all the time. So everything has coatings and has been designed to resist salt corrosion. And we'll see how that holds up against immersion in salt water over the 11 days that it's been in there.
Sir?
Thanks, Commander. Same question that I asked the Colonel earlier this week. So best case scenario, you begin operations through the plane tomorrow morning, as much as 16 hours. Then when do you hope that fixed wing air operations resume? We see Osprey flying above, obviously they're flying.
I don't run this airfield, so I'll hand that one over to you.
Yeah, so obviously we want operations to return as soon as possible, but I'm also sensitive to the need for DLNR to come and characterize. So there's some things, some COAs that I'm working, but I think I have an opportunity to provide at least a 24-hour window for Department of Land and Natural Resources to come and to characterize the state of the coral and the ecosystem. Our rotor wing and tilt rotor operations have been continuing. We were able to still conduct those. So it would be the fixed wing operations. But there's certainly things at my disposal, departure or recovery windows where we could have Department of Land and Natural Resource divers in the water, and potentially we pull them out during a specified window in order to allow fixed wing aircraft to land or take off. So I want to make sure that we characterize the ecosystem and the environment and the coral to the degree possible. So we've had several conversations with the DLNR reps who've been attending my daily commanders briefings, and we'll make sure that they've got the time they need to complete their work.
May I get a question?
How many people do you need to complete this operation? How many people are involved?
I'll turn that over to you.
Good morning, Commander Mark Anderson, Commanding Officer, Mobile Diving and Salvage Unit 1. On the scene, we primarily have one mobile dive and salvage company that's been providing the salvage support there. In addition, as we spoke, we have we have supervisor of salvage, a few people from there as they bring in to assist with expertise, as well as contracting out to Smith Salvage, who has their own crew, and then Centerlift, who has people that they've determined their size and scope based on the number. Anywhere, it is an ongoing operation, and throughout different phases, we have different numbers of people on there working, ensuring that we have both enough people to accomplish the task, enough people to do it safely, and enough to give proper rest throughout these long days. So it depends on which phase of the operation we're in and what's going on. And then throughout this, we've had, probably upwards 50, 60 people. And then that's including not just those people, but representatives from the state of Hawaii, from Marine Corps Base Hawaii, providing that support as needed.
So if weather permits, do we foresee this being removed before the end or the beginning of next?
Yeah, and I don't want to commit to a specific timeline because weather gets a vote, the equipment gets a vote, and the conditions, things that happen as we're pulling it out, get a vote. So we're optimistic that we'll be able to begin tomorrow, and then we'll see as we move through each phase and when it happens and if we have enough time remaining to continue. So we'll keep you up to date as we go, and obviously most of Hawaii has a front row seat to the operation.
And do you have another question?
Just one last one. So what is the estimated cost of this entire operation? Is it basically?
So that is subcontracted by the supervisor of salvage organization. I don't have any insight into how much money we've spent on this so far, but I'll take that and see if we can get you an answer on that.
Okay. All right, so with that, Admiral, over to you for closing remarks.
So we've put a lot of work into this, first coming up with the plans over last weekend to get the defueling done. A lot of work this week, moving material here and narrowing down to this plan that we've come up with. Really appreciate the coordination we've had with all the stakeholders, whether it was the folks from the state of Hawaii, whether it was these corporations, the federal government, and the Marine Corps. And we're very optimistic that we'll get a good result on this as we go forward. And thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, so everybody, this concludes our press conference.
Thanks, Commander.